Hey, good to see you. Thanks for coming. This is another episode of Wireframe brought to you by Design Systems House. I'm your host, Donnie D'Amato, and today we're going to be talking about, what are we talking about? We're talking about surviving the waves with a special guest who's here in the studio. Can you believe it? Can you believe it? I can't believe it either. I would like to introduce you folks to Mike Rispoli. Mike, thank you for joining me on the show today. Thank you for being in my basement. I really appreciate it. Mike, introduce yourself to the folks at cameras over there. You're working. Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely. So I'm Mike Rispoli, CTO of Cause of a Kind. We are an agency that builds software and websites for everybody else. I also am co-creator of Strictly From Nowhere podcast with my business partner, Justin Abrams. And let's see, Long Island Technologist Meetup is the other thing that we do. And Fin Forecasting is our new software that we're releasing shortly.
Plugging everything.
Everything.
Right up at the top of the show.
I got everything going on.
Because we're going to plug stuff later on, of course, too. But we're going to sandwich it. We're going to have some plugs at the beginning, plugs at the end. That's the way we'll do it. So the topic today we kind of discussed before the show, because that's kind of how this works, is surviving the waves. And it's a little ambiguous a little bit, but we'll get into it. So what are the waves that we're surviving, when we're talking about this?
Yeah, I think they're to me, surviving the waves is the waves in this industry in general. And maybe we could even say more broadly through anybody's career. Really, how do you survive these things that effectively feel like these existential crises where it's, hey, I have to reinvent myself. I think right now the topic of the hour is AI.
Right.
There's people who love it. There's people who hate it. There's people who don't know what to do about it. But we're all nervous about it. And even myself, a person who has fully embraced it, as I had, because I've been through these waves before, still makes me a little bit nervous sometimes. Because I'm like, will I make it?
Yeah. No, it's 100% right. For me, same kind of situation about looking at the space, looking at what I'm doing day to day, and the amount of focus that the company I work for is on AI, right? They're just like 80% of your code needs to be written in AI, right? I got managers that are writing reviews with AI, just like everything's AI, and you kind of wonder. And we even had layoffs recently, so like you have all that stuff together, that kind of makes you feel like a little uneasy. So, you kind of think about how do you survive the waves exactly? How do you make yourself, what's the word I'm looking for? Make yourself
unfireable.
Unfireable. Yeah,
essential.
Yeah, essential is good. I'll go with essential. Make yourself or justify your existence. That's the way I used to call it. But justifying your existence. But let's turn back time a little bit, because we started with actually this idea about CSS that I want to talk about a little bit, that maybe we could use as something to maybe use an analog, right? About what happened with CSS at least for us, and then maybe what's happening with AI today. So what's your background with CSS?
Yeah. So my background, I got into this kind of by accident. I came back from Colorado. I had a friend who opened a web design company and said, I think you could learn how to build these things. And I came into it through HTML and CSS.
Right.
And I got very, very good. I got enthralled with it. I loved building front ends. I had a bunch of front end related jobs. And then one day, it felt like suddenly CSS wasn't enough anymore. And being like a CSS specialist, or I guess we called it a front-end designer then. I mean, it was just front-end engineering then. But then this thing came along, this React thing kind of showed up. It showed up on the board. I want to say it started with Angular, but AngularJS was kind of easy to pick up if you were in HTML and you were like, ooh, magic. And then React came along and you were like, oh, this feels a lot like computer science. I don't know what I'm doing. And I felt like that was the first the first real existential crisis because suddenly nobody wanted someone who was great at CSS. And so it's always impressed me because you are amazing at CSS. I have not kept up with it.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I do it, but through Tailwind, through all these other things. But man, that was the first real crisis where I was like, I have to figure out what I'm going to do here. Am I going to go and become a designer, or am I going to like go hard on this React thing?
Yeah. I admittedly, I think I would attribute some of that to being really late in the game. For me personally, like I didn't know about CSS Zen Garden until it was like too fucking late. I actually really started getting involved in, I guess, the development culture and practice and communities and stuff right about the time of responsive web design, which is already very late in the life cycle of web development, really, right? Because I mean, I was making websites in the late '90s, but in a silo.
GeoCities,
Yeah, just in a silo. It was just me, myself, and I on a computer, just typing away, trying to make some stuff, making websites, not realizing that other people are making websites too, you know. And these were early on jobs that I didn't even realize this was a job yet. I was just like, this is going to be a job. This is crazy.
Right.
So finally, at responsive web design, and with that kind of onset around 2015 or so, maybe a little earlier, that's when I was like, oh my God, there's other people doing this. And I think because I just tend to be late in this stuff, because I was late with React too. I mean, case in point, I didn't actually start coding anything in React until 2020.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Really.
Right. And in fact, the way that I was hired for my job, which the place that I work at is completely React code base. I basically say that I bamboozled them because I knew how to write raw dogged web components. So I just spellbound them by raw dogging web components in front of them and going, yeah, okay. And they're like, oh my God, like he knows some component shit, you know?
Well, that's so funny because a lot of the interviews you'll go on, even for React, I remember I interviewed at Squarespace once upon a time. It was just like going back to vanilla JS. And I was like, oh, and I had written so much React that I go, kind of forget a little bit of this.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute, I've been writing React for 2 years now, and then suddenly you go back and you forget all the vanilla stuff, and you're like, oh my God, there's a whole platform here I could be using.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing that I think is really weird about all this stuff is a great point about the hiring, right? So the hiring is so weird because you have this situation where you're asking the person questions, okay, some algorithm stuff, some system design stuff, right? And then what happens? What's the actual job? You go on the job, you sit in the seat, and it tells you, okay, make the background color red.
Right.
Right? And you go, wait, you didn't ask me any of this stuff. How do you think I know this thing? And that's, I think, also some of the point of saying, well, oh, CSS is easy, right? So we're not even going to test you, right? Don't worry about it, whatever. CSS is easy, right? So they're not even going to worry about it. And I think that's probably what's happening a little bit there. But I think maybe as an analog, AI is easy, right? So we're not testing the AI either, right? Because what I've seen in interviews is that people are like, oh, the person's going to be using AI and blah blah blah. For me, I have in the last couple of interviews that I've conducted, I've told the person, hey, if you want to use AI, spin it up, just put it on there, put the chat in there and use it just like you would be on the job. That's I want it to be as close as possible to the way that you're going to work on the job. Because for me, I'm paying attention to see if whatever junk gets spit out by the AI, you're able to identify junk and also identify when it's actually helping you. Right? So that skill, I think, is really important. Just like I think CSS is an important skill. I may be biased, but I think that we're not testing the things that we could be testing in these interviews.
For sure. And this was like, I'm at a crossroads because as somebody who interviews now and in running my company, I think, well, what should I do? One of the things I've come out publicly is I said, I don't think the code interview is going anywhere. I think it's going to continue to be used to rule out bad candidates because the thought process generally is it's okay to pass on good people. It's not okay to hire bad people. And if I can get somebody who's like really good with code, just a ninja with their code, and then I quiz the AI, my assumption is there's going to be a lot of people, if I let them all use AI, there's going to be a handful of those people that I can't tell if I'm slipping through on somebody that isn't really great. But if I start with the code, even if they forget some things, I'm very forgiving in the code interview. I'm like, hey, let's, I don't even care if the thing runs. I want to just, let's go through the logic. I want to see what your process is of thinking about a problem in code. And same thing with CSS sometimes. It's, CSS is complex enough that I think that it's okay if somebody kind of forgets a property here and there. But I want to see how would you structure the front end, because that's one of the bigger things that starts to build up over time. My assumption is you'll be able to look up the grid properties, especially now with the aid of AI. But do you even reach for that? How would you decide when to use grid versus flexbox? How would you decide when to use absolute positioning or any other thing? These are the things I'm more concerned with, these bigger concepts. I think that's even more important now, is what is your kind of broad conceptual thinking? And then my assumption is you'll be able to get what you want out of the AI, because I've seen how you think and how you wanna kind of structure these programs. But it's still a brave new world out there. I don't know. Okay, I'm still coming up with my opinions. I don't think code interviews are going anywhere though.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I mean, especially since these companies are slow moving behemoths, right? And especially also they have problems with bandwagon effect, where they just look at each other. Remember, like, everyone's stealing Google's awful interview questions about the number of golf balls in a 747, right? we finally figured out, oh wait, maybe we shouldn't ask that anymore. So I think that's going to be it would be nice for things to be changing, right, in terms of that. And I think there's some people that are being progressive in terms of like, I'm going to pat myself a little bit on the back about being progressive in the interview and saying, please use AI, right? And in fact, I think I talked to people about this and saying, okay, how do we get a interview process that's as close as possible to the actual job, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing, because we want to see as close as possible to the actual job that you're going to be doing, so that we have the most confidence in the actual hire. Because everything that it ends up being not close to the actual experience is a variable that we can't control, that we won't know if you're actually good or bad at when it really comes down to it. It really is like dating, right? So in that way, I think having a not an over-the-shoulder interview, but a take-home interview ends up being better in that case, and then allowing yourself to use AI, right? However you got this code, that's what we're effectively testing on. I mean, shit. I mean, people before the AI, what were they doing? They were basically Fiverring some person in India to go ahead and do the work for them. There was a guy that was had 3 or 4 contracts or jobs or whatever that was cooking, right? I mean, it's the same thing with AI now. You just don't have to go ahead and speak another language.
Well, it's kind of interesting, because I want to say in the last few interviews, while I don't think the code interview is going anywhere for people who want to get a career, and when I think about how I've interviewed, to be honest, I kind of just trust what's on your resume, and I look at it, I say, well, you say TypeScript. I'm going to assume that's true. Just like when I go into surgery, I don't go, can you just let me sit in on one first? You mind if I watch it? Watch a couple.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if I agree with that one right there, but we'll let it slide for this time.
I like letting someone work on my body. I assume, hey, this is good. When I'm talking to someone, I really love when they can just talk about real projects from their job, and
Great.
You can just tell by the depth that they're going into. You're like, this person's great.
Yeah.
I think at the junior level, you're not going to have a lot of that. So then maybe you do want to have an actual exam, because you're giving them the opportunity. Maybe they haven't challenged. They're not going to challenge themselves in their take-home stuff. They may not have all those stories. I don't love the take-home, just because now that I have 3 kids, I'm like, I don't have time. I just don't have time to do a take-home. I go, I'd rather do an hour interview, just get it all out in an hour. Get an hour and a half, whatever it's got to be. Quiz me up and down, and then I tell people, just get out there, treat it like stand-up comedy. Bomb if you have to. Go on lots of interviews, get yourself confident. But for me, it's much easier to just get that 1 hour interview in, and whatever we got to do, code review, something like that. But when I talk about how I'm interviewing people most of the time, if you are an experienced person, show me a great resume. That's what's going to happen. We're going to talk about that experience. I'm going to tell you about things that we're challenges we're actually having on real projects. It's usually because I have a project in mind that I'm going to put you on.
Mm-hmm.
Start talking to you about that and see where you go with it.
Yeah. No, I got two things out of that I definitely want to ping on. The first thing is I know that the take home is super hot take situation. I know there's a lot of people that feel different ways about the take home situation. The rebuttal that I have for that is that hour that you would have with the one-on-one or whatever with the person that you've already dedicated. That's the hour that I would have for the take home.
I've
Right?
never spent an hour though. That's the problem.
Well, but fine. If that's the number of time you want to take, because again, I'm again trying to get it as close to as possible to what the actual experience is. So, if you're going to be working from home, you're going to need to block out some time that it's literally just work time. And if you can't do that, a little red flag.
Well, right now there's a lot of people out of work, so it makes. But last time I interviewed, I want to say the market was completely different than this.
Right.
I had 20 interviews to do within 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a job to work during the day, and I'm inundated with these take homes. And so then at some point I said, no more take homes.
Right.
I was like,
right.
I'm like hour,
Yeah.
like I was like,
Yeah.
let me just book the hours. And that was it, because the take homes were taking like 3 hours, because they'd say to you, only spend this much time. But it's
wait. Was that with AI or without AI?
No, this was
See,
no AI.
That's the difference.
This is pre-COVID too. So
Yeah.
I'm like in the flesh, commuting around, and there's no. I'm not even working from home at this point. But right, with no AI, it was problematic, because it was sucking up a lot of time. But I could very easily see, even with AI, you trying to go above and beyond. And good candidates, like A players, the quintessential A player, I do think they end up spending too much time. They're going to try and go above and beyond, especially if they want the gig. The 1 hour, the other thing I do, because people get nervous, this is a hot topic, the number one reason I think people hate the 1 hour in-person interview is this nerves thing.
Right.
The way that I've mitigated that in the past is I'm like, you don't have to type anything. I'll type. I'll look like the fool. I was like, I'll take that. I'll type all the code. I got the IDE. You just talk me through your solution. And that tends to ease it out. Because then you get people, like I remember I'd get people who were like, I know React, but they didn't. They worked in Angular. And then they said they knew React. They tried to look it up right before the interview. And you could tell. And then I'm like, yeah, but I think you could learn React. I know you can learn React if you're a good engineer. So let's take that off the table. Just say, I need some state, and then I'll do the React version, or tell me what you do in Angular, and we'll talk about bringing this into React, and then we could even debate like different ways that, like, what you like about Angular. When I'm starting to have a conversation like that, I actually really like that, because that shows me a lot more than whatever code we're writing down.
Yeah. The thing that I think I'll mention about that is well, first off, that's very similar to one of the interviews that I had when I got hired for my job, which was they put me in a React code base, and they're like, okay, we're going to fill out the middle of this app. It was like a tic-tac-toe thing. We're going to fill out the middle of this app. So he was really just asking, okay, what's the logic, right? If you look at all the cells, how do you figure out if all the cells are X's or all the cells are O's? It had nothing to do necessarily with React, but when I would screw up on the React syntax, which I absolutely did because I didn't really code React very much, he would be like, oh, okay, just single brackets, not double brackets there. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. All right, great. But something you brought up earlier was about the side project stuff, okay? And I, for the longest time, was all about the side projects. I would ask whatever candidate it was, I'm like, all right, what are your side projects, right? Because the thing that I wanted to get out of that was the passion about doing what you love doing. Right? Because I wouldn't, if you weren't excited about doing this kind of stuff, then I also felt like, oh, okay, well, you're not going to be excited or exciting to work with or whatever. Just like the vibe would be off, I guess is the thing I'm looking at. So like I would always be, admittedly, preferring people who had side projects, as small as they were or as large as they were or whatever it was. And the way that I would actually kind of spin it would be, tell me about a project that you assigned to yourself. It could be a self project, something, in your pajamas, whatever it is, but it can't be something that was assigned to you. It has to be something that you assigned yourself. You identified yourself, because if you identified the problem yourself, then you're more apt to learning about how to solve the problem. Right? So I'd always ask that thing. Now, more recently, I had feedback that said people don't have side projects anymore because people don't want to be doing code after work.
Hmm.
They want to spend time with their families or ride around their motorbikes, and the thing is that I I get it. I get that people want to have lives outside of the coding stuff, and especially in the case of people who aren't doing design related stuff. I think that honestly, the people who are doing design related stuff, they get a lot more passionate about this stuff than people who are just like, I don't know, trying to solve a database query or something like that. That's not fun, you
Right.
know. I think the design part ends up being fun. So when you end up hiring full stacks or even toward the back, yeah, I can understand why a person is closer, it being closer to being a job than being a fun side project.
Mm.
So now I had to kind of like spin it a little bit, where now we kind of ask instead, we say, tell me about the last thing you learned in development. Because if you're going to learn some stuff, it could be because of a thing that was, given to you, but it could also be because you are looking out for the new thing,
Right.
So like, maybe they say, I learned anchor positioning recently, or that I learned about proxies or something like that. And then, you can get a feel for, okay, the person is going out there and searching for stuff. So yeah, that's always been a little hard for me, I think.
Side projects is a tough one. As an engineer, just because I agree, especially now that I have kids and everything, it's very hard to. It's funny. It's funny. I have more side projects now that I have kids than before. It's like
How did that happen?
hysterical that happens. But there is something to be said, you know, because I think that people think their side projects need to be more polished than they do.
Mm-hmm.
I always had side things that I was learning. Like I was very big on learning different programming languages for a long time. I just had like a joy of doing that. Never got very good with any of them. But what I would do is I would learn. It just taught me different ways to solve problems, and I would try like a functional language or a Lisp or something different, and then I would take that back to my work. So I feel like to your point, you could say, tell me about not just your side projects, but what are you learning? What are you interested in? What are you trying to improve on? Because I do think if you love this, you are thinking about it all the time. And maybe there is an aspect, and I'm one of those people that got into this by accident.
Yeah.
And I want to say I
Same.
played the numbers. There was a large demand for too little supply in
Mm-hmm.
this industry for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And let's be real, a ton of us got into it because it was a really great way to get that six-figure job.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you got there fast. You got there fast. You're looking, like, your parents. That was what all they talked about was the
Yeah.
six-figure job. So you get into this, you get the six-figure job. You're just cranking away, and then suddenly I talk about how suddenly when I became really competent and confident at the same time, the love happened. But
Right.
it didn't happen right away. I wasn't like one of these people who was tinkering with like computers at home all the time, and it took a certain level of competence where I go, oh, now I really enjoy this. Like, I equate it to playing guitar or something where it's like it's not fun to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. You want to play Led Zeppelin, but to get there you got to put in all this work, and that part's not necessarily fun, or it's fun for some people and not so fun for others. And I equate it to drums, because I said even when you suck at drums, it's kind of fun.
That's right.
And sometimes front end can be like that, because even when you kind of suck at it, you're like seeing it happen. So
Right.
you're like, that's why I had to come in that way. I had to come in from I'm going to try and make these products happen, but even when I suck at it, I'm still kind of having fun. You're right. I don't think I would have been the guy, even to this day. I'm not like, let me learn some SQL. Like, let me like optimize database queries. Let me solve leak code puzzles. Some people are like that. So coming full circle, though, I think you had a lot of folks in the industry that were not, and maybe never developed that passion. They were sort of always riding the fact that, well, this kind of works for me because there's a lot of demand for this. And now that the demand is changing, that's shifting. What's happening is I think you're seeing a lot of the really passionate folks kind of trickle up to the top and continue to be successful. And the people who were really like, this was just a job, it may be coming off in the lack of side projects, the lack of learning over the last few years, that you settle into it. And so talking about riding the waves, I had really settled into this HTML and CSS. I was getting so good at it.
Yeah.
Then React shows up, and I'm like, I knew a lot of jQuery.
Yes.
And that was it. I didn't really know a lot of vanilla JS. And then like React shows up, and I go, oh my god. Like, and here's the funny part. The first time I have to write React, It's in CoffeeScript, and there's no JSX. There was no. We were like early, super early, and I had like just figured out CoffeeScript, which was, and that actually I attribute to starting my love of like learning different programming languages, because it felt very magical to like master that. But then that happened, and then I kind of hated it. I really didn't like React. I was really like this. I was like, I can't learn this. This feels really difficult. That friction in my brain was happening, that early guitar. And I ended up going to an agency. We weren't using React there. But then suddenly something shifted where I started to give it a look again. And the second time around, it sort of clicked.
Right.
And I started to like it. And then I got better at it. And then I started taking that route. But man, that first existential crisis. I think there's a lot of people that are feeling that right now, and I think some of it is there's a supply and demand issue right now. There's just, and I don't know if AI has to do with that. I think that there was just, I think right now companies are really focused on profitability, and that just happens to be it. There's not a lot of free money going around. There's not a lot of VC capital going around. AI has sucked up some of that, and what you're left with is the people who really love this are embracing the new tooling, and the people like myself who've just been through it before are like, first time I used AI, loaded up Cursor, absolutely hated it.
Right.
But I said, I'm pushing through this damn thing, you know, and I put it down for a minute, tried different tools, and then I finally landed on my stack that's working for me, and now I'm really loving it. But I had to push through that learning curve once again, but I just had been through it before, so I knew it was coming.
Yeah. I'm reminding of like my journey of the HTML and CSS as well, because of the struggles that it was for me. Especially then, I didn't have a community to even ask necessarily. I'm just like looking at stuff and trying to make things work. So, you know, nowadays when you're able to go ahead and just like effectively not do the work. I mean, that's effectively what's going on, right? Is this like, oh, I just need to figure out how to vertically center a div. Like, you just ask for the centered div to be vertical or vertically centered, and it's done. There's no experience gained necessarily unless you really look into it and be like, oh, okay, that's how you did it,
Right.
you know? So like back when we were trying to center divs, like it was so hard or impossible in cases to actually get it done based on what was available. And then, you know, we eventually learned not just one way, but several ways of centering this fucking div.
And we interviewed on it.
And we sure did. So, but now, the joke about centering a div is gone. And it's not, I don't think, because there's several ways of doing it, because when we had several ways of doing it, the joke was still around. But now no one's telling the joke, because no one's actually pulling their hair out to try to figure out if they need to figure out, you know, like how to center this div. They just ask for the div to be fucking centered.
Right.
You know? So this shift about surviving this particular wave of, you know, how am I surviving with CSS right now, for me personally, is CSS is in a resurgence, because now we're getting all these new features in CSS that we never had before.
It's incredible.
I mean, like the anchor positioning stuff that's coming out is going to be huge. It's. I think Firefox is supposed to have it maybe now or maybe next month. That'll have like basically everything else that all the other browsers do. So that means that you can deprecate or just remove floating UI or other positioning engines right out of there, because it's going to be handling in CSS. So it's huge, right? It's removing all this JavaScript that would normally be seeing in the page, waiting for one pop-up to show up, you know? So that stuff is really important. Plus, AI, when everyone thinks that AI is good with code, AI is actually not too great with the new CSS, because it is so new.
This is true.
Right? So, sure, if you're doing like basic shit, you know, putting the background colors, centering a div, whatever, all that stuff is probably fine. But when you get into some of the more complex stuff, I mean, talking about, you know, at the meetup, we were talking about relative color stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, you know, it knows the reference an MDN article, but it doesn't know what you're doing with it yet, because it still hasn't learned that stuff yet. And that's going to come, hopefully, with time. But then there'll be new CSS on top of that. You know,
and you still have to learn this stuff yourself. That's, you know, that's the other thing about things like CSS is you have to keep up with it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it kind of goes by the wayside. Like I have not kept up with it. But I'm not so worried because I'm usually like, tell me when I can use it. You know, I'm kind of at that point now where in just my role and what I worry about for clients, I'm always like, just tell me about it when I can use it. But I kind of wonder though, was that centering a div? Was that just getting in the way? Like having to know, like there being 3 ways to center a div. That was not a feature.
Right.
That was like, all right, like
it was a workaround.
Yeah, it was a workaround. Like it was a workaround for all these things. Remember when you had to like do like the /9 to get it to work in IE9? Like you could like add multiple properties. There were all these little tricks for
you know what? It's funny that you mentioned that because I was only in my browser back then. I actually didn't do anything about.
Cross-browser.
I didn't do any cross-browser shit.
Oh
I didn't do any. I didn't. When everyone was talking about, oh, you got to do this thing for IE, you got to Netscape, whatever. I heard about that after the fact, right? I was already. I was. I think by the time that I was actually doing proper web development, was around the time, I don't know, 2013. We were pretty much. I mean, jQuery was in. Like we're obviously in jQuery at that point. So like, you know, the standards are already aligning already there in terms of the JavaScript parts. And then sure, there was some CSS stuff that was shit that you need to go ahead and move around. I remember zoom = 1 being like a thing that you need to put on the HTML for it to work somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. So I remember that I was at the tail end of that. But the if statements, the conditional ifs that were in HTML that I saw in older articles, never did that shit. Never did that shit. And I was like lucky in that way.
I remember specifically doing a lot of cross-browser stuff. I remember having to support IE9. I worked in a company that did email, and we had to support like Outlook 2003.
Oh, God.
And I developed a whole framework. So this goes into like a side project. It wasn't a side, it was a project for the company. Nobody asked me to do it. But I built the HTML and CSS framework for responsive email that worked from Outlook 2003 into the future to make it responsive, everything. And it handled all the edge cases. And to this day, it's still bulletproof because that's the beauty of email. It never changes. So
Is it the beauty?
It's the beauty of email. All these table layouts. And so, you know, again, I just kind of took that up. But responsive design was definitely, that was the thing that was happening around. There was M-dot sites. That was the big thing.
Oh,
they were
yeah.
doing these M-dot sites.
Yeah.
And
I looked at that as a person who likes efficiency, and I was like, why would I make 2 sites? I was like, it's already hard enough for me to make the first site. Why would I make a second site, especially at that time, too, where there wasn't a lot of mobile devices? There really wasn't.
I didn't even own one. I didn't have a smartphone at that time.
Yeah, there really wasn't. I actually was pretty advanced in that because I ended up having a couple Windows phones.
Okay.
That I was playing around with. So I was using some mobile stuff, but I'm just looking at this going, I don't want to make 2 sites. There's got to be a better way of doing this. And then when that was launched, when Ethan put out the article in the book and all of this stuff, I was like, that's where I just was like, this is what I want. This is so cool. The art that I'm making is adapting to wherever it is. And that was huge for me because like I tell people all the time I was an interactive sculptor, so I loved people interacting with things and seeing react and all that stuff. So it gets expensive. So websites were the cheaper way of making interactions and letting everyone see it. But now the thing is even more dynamic where before you even get an opportunity to start exploring, it's just it is personalized to you in this device that you're seeing it right now. I thought that was beautiful. So much so that back then I went back to college when I was like in my early 30s, and in one of the courses the professor was like, I want you to interview someone who is doing the thing that you want to be doing right now. So what did I do? I reached out to Ethan. I reached out to Ethan and I was like, hey, you know, I got to do this like interview thing for this course I'm taking. Do you mind? And it's really funny because when we were doing the interview, it felt to me like I was definitely like, I don't know, bothering him a little bit. I definitely had that feeling. He was definitely being nice about it too, but I definitely had the feeling that I was bothering him about it a little bit. Fast forward. Now I'm obviously doing design system stuff. I'm writing blogs. I got all this other stuff that's going on, and Ethan is also in the design system kind of community also. And at one point, we're conversing back and forth in a thread or something like that, and he's effectively agreeing with me about what I'm saying in the thing. So maybe months or years later, he said, I basically, I don't remember exactly what happened, but he basically told me, I would read anything that you put out, and I was like, my pearls. I clutched my pearls. I was like, "Are you really, really?" I like that, and because of me looking up to him years ago. The interesting part about this is that he didn't know that that was the same person because it's been so long.
He just completely forgot.
It's been so long because I'm assuming he just kind of like brushed
Well,
it off as dumb student, whatever. I'll do the thing, get out of here, bye.
He probably felt like he was
Right,
back.
right.
Yeah.
So I reminded him. I said, "Hey, do you know that we talked back in 2013, 2014, whatever?" And he's like, "Wait a minute." And I was like, "Search for my name in your inbox." He goes, "Oh my God, I remember this shit. I can't believe that was you." I said, "Yeah, that was me." So like that's just side anecdote stuff that when it comes full circle, when the person that you're looking up to now, is now reading your stuff and looking at your stuff, it's just like so beautiful when that happens. And in fact, Ethan's the first person I contacted when I started writing the book because he has the book as well. It was very successful, so he gave me a lot of pointers in the book. But anyway, that's my side note about that whole thing.
Book. I mean, I remember that. I remember a list of parts. I mean, Jeffrey Zeldman's Designing with Web Standards. Someone told me to read that.
Yeah,
that was the first really real book that like affected me and made me think I really love this. I felt like it like leveled me up in a way. And then like the sad part about that is that book was really very front end focused, and that was why it was so sad for me to like have to reinvent, right? Like and go down this like program. But then I found other I feel like every mentor I had though was always in the form of an author whose book I read.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I ever really met my hero. No, that's not true. I actually paid for mentorship when Justin and I first started this business from somebody, Eric Elliott. I had read his JavaScript stuff for years. I had read his book on composing software for years. And we had hired him as a mentor. It's so interesting, though. At that point in time, I wasn't really looking for programming advice, but really more business advice on like on the operations. We were really struggling with shipping projects on time and on budget and like how to run an agile motion. And I don't think he expected that as like when we came to him as needing help.
Yeah.
But I have to credit him with really changing our program. That was the one time. Other than that, though, every other like mentor I had was really just the author of a book, and I read their stuff and I consumed their stuff. And I have not. You seem to have met a lot of kind of heroes in the industry, probably through going. I know you've met Rich Harris. And
I think it's more of like a matter of I'm reaching out to people, because I'm big in the community.
Right.
Not just because I'm me myself big in the community. I'm big into community.
It's right. I've only just started.
Yeah. So that the being big into community, and I think that's because of the extroverted part of me, and also I think another thing that helps out for me as well is the working from home thing as well. So I look for ways of connecting with people because I work from home that I can be like, okay, what are you doing? Let's talk, let's chat, all that kind of stuff. So all that together, there are these people in the community. Like Jeffrey Zeldman, he follows me on Blue Sky. I was like, and I actually didn't know who he was until I got this follow. And I was like, oh my God, look, this work is incredible.
Right.
It's so funny that you bring him up because he follows me, and I followed him back. I was just like, oh wow, great stuff. Same thing with John Alsop. So he did the Tao of Web on a list apart, I think.
Okay.
So we got connected as well through a mutual person as well. And again, I didn't know, again, stuff that he wrote from a long time ago. Mm-hmm. But then I'm talking to another colleague of mine, a guy named Ben Callahan, who I mentioned in passing. Oh yeah, I'm working with John on this thing. He says, John, you working with John? He says, the same web DAO guy? I was like, yeah, he sounds great. He says, yeah, well, he wrote this thing that was I'm like, oh, I had no idea, Wow. And so it's interesting about like, I guess the connections that you made in the community that way, where you're going to find the the people who, the shoulders you stand on, the giants that are there, and how many of them, I'd like to think, are just humans, right?
They
That's the
really
thing that
are.
you kind of miss.
Remarkably approachable. Remarkably approachable.
Yeah, yeah.
It's kind of incredible. And well, that's part of our thought about starting Long Island Technologists too, because I know going to the city is definitely the way.
Right.
Being in New York City is definitely the way to meet more of these people. But we were like, well, let's bring it out here because maybe we could start our own little community out here and get that going, so we don't have to travel so far. And there are tons of people that ended up moving to Long Island from New York City that we know.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're there, but it's very it's just very interesting because what happens to mentorship now in like the age of AI? I think about that. I mean, I've recently been doing that Code Dojo thing that I really enjoy. I thought about, like, should I be teaching this to people? Like, being early to this, because I do see people who are struggling with it. And it's, well, people taught me, and maybe that's the way to give back, is to be a mentor to somebody else, and try and teach them this is how to get through that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many ways of giving back. I mean, just being a part of the community itself, I think, is a good thing. Building your own community in Long Island, I think, is a great thing as well. There used to be a tech meetup. Oh, sorry, I'll be more specific. There used to be a Drupal meetup. Okay, there used to be a Drupal meetup that I used to go to. Easy now. Oh no, canceled. There used to be a Drupal meetup that I used to go to when I was kind of getting started a little bit, because I wanted to kind of see what the connections were or whatever. And also a lot of the reason was, oh man, we should have our fathers here instead. So the reason that I got into that was that I went to school with a guy named Nick Silvaggio, and Nick was into tech, and he actually was the one who was, I think, co-organizing this Drupal meetup. And the thing about us is that we used to breakdance in the high school together.
Okay.
So we had connection that already, and then our fathers used to work together because that's how we're all connected.
Oh my God!
They all work.
Fathers, right?
Yeah.
Right,
So for the folks who don't know, Mike and our fathers worked together at the jail here in East Meadow for a little while. Or actually, my father for a long while. So it was just funny to actually get that connection there. But yeah, Nick is another connection that way, same way, which is crazy. But he's in tech too. I think he does IT in some place actually in out east. So I'm gonna have to tell him to see if he wants to show up to these things too.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
But yeah, I mean, just like, man, what am I talking about? There's all these tangents. Goodness gracious. The meetups, right? So yeah, the Drupal meetup, that's where I kind of started the whole thing. And I absolutely appreciate having a meetup here local. Because, yeah, I mean, granted, exactly what you said earlier, having all the tech meetups in the city is where all the tech is.
Right.
All the tech is in the city. So you expect to have tech in the city. I mean, that's why my event's going to be in the city, because you're going to get a lot more people there just overall. But I think the Long Island Technologists group that you and Justin made for the past couple of now years, has been growing and growing. I mean, what's the last RSVP that was on that thing?
I mean, the last time we had 72 RSVPs.
That's crazy.
Which was really wild. I mean, we didn't get that many as many showing up, but we still are getting between 30 and 40 people every time in a room. We do our talk. It's very intimate. It's not very formal, which is great. We're actually looking at doing it at a rock climbing gym soon. So that's going to be interesting. We're going to have a much bigger space, and we may have a little activity.
Hell yeah.
Into the whole thing. So you might have to break those hands in, dude.
I don't know about these hands. These are
like George
these are very, very gentle. Very, very gentle. Yeah, well, that's the reason why I told Mike this, so I'll tell you folks. But the reason I did rock climb for a little while, but then my hands started to hurt. I'm like, oh my God, my hands are everything. I used to build stuff and code stuff. I'm like, I can't. And I got all this anxiety about seeing stuff on Instagram, about screwing up. I'm like, I couldn't. And then I also, my wife, she climbs and then she comes back with scars on her elbows. I'm like, I can't even.
You can't do it.
I just can't even do it. So, but yeah, I mean, activity, sure. Well, I'm sure I'll collaborate somehow, some way.
But I think this is also tying into the surviving the waves thing. Community will help you survive these waves, because We've hired people out of Long Island technologists. We've seen people start businesses out of
Mm-hmm.
Long Island technologists who, like, out of our encouragement, we've connected people. So when you're in these situations, one of the things that I also think has made this a bit of a wave, the hiring is such a difficult thing right now, is there's no good online outlet to apply in anymore. Like going to LinkedIn,
Awful.
horrible.
Yeah.
You're never going to get noticed there. You really do have to make the intimate connections. And to be honest, I remember back when I was like graduating college, monster.com.
Mm-hmm.
I remember sending the resumes out, never got a call
Nothing.
back from anybody. The
Mm-hmm.
only way to get a job is to know somebody, get connections. And it's always been that way.
Right.
So I think now we're all kind of isolated. So we've lost touch with our community a little. So by getting out there, it gets better. The other thing is I just like look forward to seeing people. You work from home all the time, for Christ's
Same.
sake. It's like,
Right.
I'm like, whoa, I get to see a person. I get,
Mm-hmm.
to, get to hang out,
Mm-hmm.
get some food,
Oh yeah, get some food. Yeah, I'm hungry. Let's eat. Let's eat and chat. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the reason how we met, right?
That's
So like,
exactly
Mike and I met along with Justin at Vercel's Ship conference 2 years ago, or
2 years ago,
yeah,
New York City. That's right.
yeah, or 2.5, I think, because it was like the summer or whatever. And I was there with Kathleen McMahon, who knows and probably a friend of the show. I'm going to get her on here at some point. And it was interesting because Kathleen, who is normal, I wouldn't call her necessarily an extrovert, but she told me, she's like, all right, I'm going to be extroverted. And she walked up to you folks first to say hello. And I was like, oh, okay, let's see what's going on here. And then we started chatting and was like, wait, you're in East Meadow. I live in East Meadow.
That was the crazy
That was
thing.
just, we're all both in New York City. Because again, you're just talking about how, you're trying to make this community here, but you decided that this particular time you're going to go into the city for this particular event. And sure as shit, I go to the city for this particular event, but I do for all the time anyway. And there it is. Boom. It comes together. We have so much in common overall, just between
Our fathers even working together. That's weird too.
that's the
right?
great. Because let me say, there's a lot of people on Long Island. The folks that are not here on Long Island and all the places in the country and the world that are watching this, Long Island. Yes, there's a lot of people, but there is a lot of people. Like it's not common for all to have fathers working together and then in the lives that change in different directions
Well,
that come
it
back.
wasn't even the big
you know?
jail. We're not talking Rikers Island.
No,
here,
no.
We're
This
talking
is a
Little
local
Nassau It's a
local jail. Yeah, right across from the high school. That's
Salt of the earth jail.
That's
you know
right.
what I'm
That's
saying?
right. Oh my God. But yeah, I mean, the community thing is huge for the networking stuff. For you to be able to go ahead and get a job these days is really, and I think, like you said, I think it's always been about that thing. I'm just trying to think like my jobs. Well, so my last job was from going to a meetup, and the meetup was being sponsored by my place, and there was a speaker that basically was like, "Hey, there's one more open role, whatever." So I chatted with that guy, and we became pretty close, but ended up, hiring for the thing. So that was purely networking, purely 100% networking. Before that, when I was working at Compass, I'm pretty sure I applied through the normal channels. Probably not LinkedIn. I probably found Compass and they were hiring or whatever. So I was like, all right, let me apply. And then they called me back, and it was like, kind of the process you would see on TV, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And then I think the startup that I was at, Itemize, I think that might have been because they were cheap. They might have done something weird that I happened upon, like maybe even like a Craigslist kind of thing that you're just like, oh, let me see, I need a front end person for a little bit, whatever, and it was just like, let me try,
Yeah.
and that's when I was hungry back then. 2015 was when I got out of college. I was actually was teaching in the college, and I got out of there and I wanted to do tech, so I was just like getting anything. So I wanted to just whoever was gonna give me a chance kind of thing. So I have a suspicion that I found it on like a Craigslist or kind of like a really not off the beating path kind of site to do that. But yeah, but now because everything's kind of like standardized, but because it's standardized, you have the easy apply button, which super easy to apply. You'll never be seen, but it's really easy to apply.
Really easy to apply.
Yeah. So yeah, the community thing is huge. I mean, what ends up happening with me all the time is I'll have people who reach out to me directly that ask and go, "Hey, do you know a guy?" Right? I asked you if you knew a guy.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So that's what ends up happening, and I think you hired him now.
I hired that guy.
You hired that guy.
I did know a guy, but you know what? I talk about him all the time. He was applying. None of it was working for him.
Right.
But I just,
such a nice guy too.
But he was posting.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it didn't work for you, but I had a job because for me in my business, any day I could sign a project. Like I could have a project in my inbox right now. I don't know, and then I'm going to need to staff it.
Right.
And so I don't do outsourced staffing agency. I just don't do anything like that. I really do like to pick the hire and get it. And I had this project. I saw he was available. I said, I think he'd be great. We met. Boom. But it was because he was top of mind because he was posting every day.
Yeah. And that's, I think the other thing that's really key on this is when people get laid off, that's when they start posting about this and this
That's
and
right.
this and you're too late.
You're too
late. You with the job right now. You with the job right now. You need to make a post on LinkedIn right now. In fact, share this video right now. Share the video right now. There's your post right there. I gave you content. I was telling people the Long Island Technologies thing about posting, regularly. And the big thing about that is, and you could post anything, but you need to be top of mind for someone.
Yep.
That's the big thing. That's the reason, why I post all the time. Mike's posting all the time. Why you see these people, the same people, post all the time. It's not for you who is getting annoyed because you keep seeing our stupid faces. It's for the person who signs on to LinkedIn randomly because they're actually looking for someone. And guess who's at the top of our feed? Us. Right? Because our faces are constantly there. So that's the same thing that unfortunately you need to do to stay relevant. Because if and when something happens where you end up having to, jobs lost, life change, something of that nature, you want to be top of mind for these people that are looking out. Right? I had a friend of mine who recommended me to someone else as a potential hire for their company. It's a big company in Brooklyn. I'm trying to be vague about it, but that guy who's hiring reached out to me directly and said, "Hey, your friend said that you would be good for this hire. Here's the job role. What do you think?" Et cetera, et cetera. That's direct. That's not me looking. That's literally people knowing each other and making these connections. Right. So this is what's happening out there. Yes, we're talented people, but there's other talented people out there too that aren't being picked up because they're in the shadows.
Right.
So be out there, be posting, be relevant. Even if it's a little side project that you're doing, right? If you're doing a little side project and you want to talk about it out in the open, right? I mean, both of us have side projects we talk about all the time. So, we were talking about how important I think a side project even is.
It's never been easier. This is the most accessible it's ever going to be to do side projects. Like, you used to sit down and code to really get a side project off the ground. Now you can really get a project off the ground, even if it's just a new technique or way to do things. You know more than you think. That's somebody told me that once because I was always thinking that like but this is I've seen this stuff everywhere. Isn't this generic? Am I just adding to the noise? No, you're not. A lot of people don't know the things that you know, or just being vulnerable, talking about something. Hey, I didn't understand this, and this helped me to understand this.
Right.
There's all sorts of little content plays that you can make. It doesn't have to be big blog posts. It doesn't have to be huge projects. You just have to be out there. Unfortunately, it's just like your coding skills not atrophying because you got to interview. The same concept with the content. You really do have to be out there all the time because this is the way you meet people nowadays too.
Right.
Because you're not in the office with anybody anymore.
Right.
So you have to be putting out this type of stuff for better or for worse. So, I don't know. I've seen people who don't look like social media people become social media people.
Right.
Because they know that their career depends on it now.
Yeah, it's true. So we're coming to the end of the show over here. It is the sandwich where we're going to go ahead and plug all the stuff again. But give us more detail about the stuff that's happening so that people can follow and be a part of it.
Yeah. So I'll start with the agency, Cause of a Kind. That's the bread and butter business. We build software and websites for you, everybody else. Our bread and butter is really doing MVPs. The thing that we're seeing a lot of traction around now is people who have built things in Lovable, built things in Replit, have big ideas, looking to raise money, but they need an engineer to get it over the line.
Mm-hmm.
The realization that you need an engineer is still out there. We are that team for you. I operate as a fractional CTO for these folks. I can bring my team in. It's a lot of times I can help and get the initial prototype off the ground, depending on my schedule and what's available. So that is our core business, is really building software for other people and especially early stage startups. The next thing that we're working on is Strictly from Nowhere.
Right.
That's the podcast that, Justin and I run a stand-up every single day, and we give 30 minutes, and we keep finding things to talk about. So if you're looking for a daily show, that's us, but we also do interviews with entrepreneurs. So we interview entrepreneurs and what their story is from zero to market.
Yeah.
On top of that, we also have a product coming out called Fin Forecasting. This is marrying finance with project management. One of the things that we had struggled with as an agency was having clean financial projections. With an agency, you ride these waves. Speaking of thing, you ride these waves of boom and bust cycles. You have sales, you have projects that finish, you have projects that start. They rarely ever line up, and really making sure your cash flow is clean is very, very difficult over time. We do this with projections, but we've recently baked our project management Kanban solution into those projections because there was not a good way to marry these things together without wrestling a bunch of spreadsheets. So Fin Forecasting is our product to basically make sure that if you're an agency, you never lose money on a project again. Really, really essential. And then finally, Long Island Technologists. Right. Which is the meetup, and if you are on Long Island, you definitely have to come out because we want to see you there.
Hell yeah, yeah. And to go ahead and top that off, there's a new one that was that was announced today. It's March 19th.
Yes.
March 19th.
Yep.
Did you not know that?
No, I did. I forgot. Ryan Riley is, and speaking of the speaker, he is actually a sales guy. So he's big on sales.
Yeah.
And so for Long Island Technologists, one thing to note is we don't always do tech demos. Like last time we did Code Dojo, which was my take on AI-based education. This one's going to take you down the road of sales. So if you're looking to get better at selling or selling yourself, which is important for any engineer, Ryan Riley's the guy. He's going to be giving us a talk.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I actually really like about LIT that no other tech meetup that I know of is doing, which is bringing in the skills for technologists that they don't already have. Because what you see all the time with many meetups is you're going to bring in, some CTO or some VP of design or whatever, and it's just like it's effectively their skip level that they're going to be talking about, right? And it's basically like, okay, how do I get up there? But what about all the skills that are on the sides? About especially in a case where you are going to potentially be your own boss in your particular case, right? So you're going to need to know some of the other skills that are tangential to not you just coding. So the stuff that you learn out of this particular meetup being so different from the norm, but also aligned to what you would probably be really helpful for, is super helpful. So if you are in Long Island, absolutely come on March 19th. I'll put a link in the description over there for the actual, I think it's Eventbrite you use, right?
We use Eventbrite.
Eventbrite. So put the Eventbrite in there so you can subscribe to that to get all the notifications. And I think there's also like a newsletter, I think, that also comes out.
We got the newsletter, sign up for that. That's the newsletter. There's the website, longislandtechnologists.com.
Yep, that'll have it there.
So that's also going to have it, but it's definitely the way to go. I mean, we cover a lot of soft skills. Like we really do try and round it out because this stuff, I mean, that's the surprise of becoming a CTO is you do a lot more sales. What do you think?
Could you imagine? Oh my God, it's incredible. Well, thank you for joining on the show. We're going to definitely, absolutely have Mike here for other things because he is local. Local. So you're local. So I'm going to try to see if he's more of a regular guest on here. Because we also chat a lot. We have a lot of hot takes too. But absolutely check out Strictly from Nowhere podcast every day. They got something going on. I'm going to sneak on there at some point really soon too. But anyway, that's our show. Thank you so much for watching. Before you go, please help out the show by smashing the like and subscribe button to notify the next time that we go live. And feel free to continue the conversation on our official Design Systems House Discord by visiting discord.ds.house. Play nice in those comments, and I'll see you on the internet. Bye.